Welcome everybody, we are here. Let me fix this. Let me fix the stream. Stream view with the window capture. Proper window capture, please. Hello, Mrs. Arlsberg. Text 1. Alright, analysis, please. Move 11 with a record. The record. 91 months subscribed. Oh my god. Hello, computer. What are you doing? Hello. Analysis. Alright. Whew, my computer is... OBS just uses way too much RAM. It's almost as bad as, I don't know, everything. Running at the same time. 91 months from Move 11. We got Miskatonic. I always start my day by going to the internet and reading my daily chess quote. Paul Morphy. Morphy not really busting a lot of quotes. We should look at a birds today. Is today Bird's birthday? Birthday Bird. Miskatonic alumnus. So, thoughtful analysis. I'm getting older and more tired, but also thoughtful in my old age. Analysis with dinosaur. Yeah, I'm becoming like a night owl, and everything I do is getting later and later, and I'm staying up later and later. Did you submit your game from Simul Astrobate? No. That's a draw, Move 11. Astrobate never submits draws. He's into showing off his wins. And I've got a game from Snedsteg. I've got a game from Nefedov. It looks like we've got Nefedov against a fellow Ukrainian. I've got something's wrong here. Something's missing. No, Nefedov is a Philidor. Then I've got Astrobate, and then I've got stuff I put in because we don't get enough submissions from you guys. Okay, I was away for a long time. I was away for like 4 weeks between November and December, and I think we've lost some of the continuity of my streams, and I've also been dropping down the morning streams. The morning streams I got not enough viewers, and it was kind of a waste of my time anyway. I'm thinking about a world where we do like 4 evening streams a week instead of 3 evening streams, 3 morning streams. Forget the morning streams or middle of the day, noon streams, whatever. That's pointless because there's no Americans, Greenlanders or whatever. There's no, people from the West anyway. So the key is to do evening streams since I'm in Europe. We've got European and a few American viewers, or Western. I had a coffee earlier. I feel better. If you can't be good, be enthusiastic. Oh, okay, I get it now. All right, I've gone live according to Discord. You submitted a game. What about you, Move 11? Have you submitted a game? Perhaps we should start with Astrobate's submission or Nefedov's submission because Snedsteg may or may not be here. I'm feeling what's the word I'm looking for? Brain fogged. The less alcohol I drink, the more my brain fog gets worse. Would you recommend brown beer? Beer just makes me sleepy. That's the problem, Nefedov. Better to drink wine. Don't you like wine? Everything will eventually make you sleepy. Alright, we're cutting back. So I've got Snedsteg, Nefedov, Astrobate. You guys want to go first? What's with the absolute, move 11? You saw an Absolute vodka ad or something like that? Absolute. It's a rival for Revolut. A new banking. Fintech. Alright. Absolutionists. I want to start with Astrobait's game because it'll be faster than Nefidaus. Nefidaus is going to be a more serious tournament battle. This is an online, Astrobait showing his skills off. It's not as intensive as a Nefidov OTB game, which is like to be more serious. So, welcome everybody. Gather around. Thought-provoking analysis here. Chess philosophy. I mean, I'm not Jesse Cry. I'm better. No, I'm trying to be philosophical about chess, but I don't have a degree in philosophy. But I try to be philosophical and thoughtful, and I didn't go to the University of Heidelberg. But anyway, knight f3, d6. This is a good move against knight f3. We just saw a game where Astrobait faced h6, and he answered it with b3. b3 is very effective against h6, but not so much against d6. As we've seen before, d6 is, what is it about? d6 is about building the wall. Usually, well, I like d6 because there's a couple things we can do. Okay, first of all, there's the Trompowsky-like confusing bishop g4 move, and there's also Sicilian transpositions if white decides to play e4, but there's also building the wall with e5. So it's up to white. D4 is possible, e4 is possible, c4, and then Astrobait decides to play b3, but I don't think this is a great option here. I want to highlight. Can I highlight this? We can't highlight this. Can I copy and paste? You can't copy and paste from the... Unfortunately, I can't copy and paste a line from the opening explorer. That sort of sucks. Does that suck, or is it just me? I can translate it to English. Open in reading mode? I'm curious, what does that do? Reading mode isn't available on this page. Okay, well that was useful. So is there any way I can cast? I can cast it to another device. That's great. Translate to English. Inspect. Print. I could print it. Anyway, guys, look at the statistics here with b3. Very few games. Okay, so it's statistically not really... Don't talk about vodka. Come on. Stop that. This is no place to be drinking vodka. Vodka, it just makes me sleepy, too. And drunk. We need a good glass of wine. Maybe 2 good glasses of wine. But I'm not going to open a good bottle of wine on the stream here. And start drinking at home. So, dude, look at the statistics. Terrible score, but it's statistically... I don't like b3 Astrobait. You're encouraging the wall. You're like a Mexican immigrant encouraging Trump to build a wall. You're on the Mexican side of the border, and you want to get across, and you're like, build a wall, build a wall, build a wall. Because b3 has very little effect against the wall. And so, after e5, if you play bishop b2, we're basically transposing to Richard Pallister's recommendation, which is the double wall, c5. I like this. It's very hard for white to generate any counterplay against. I played this against Astrobait a couple of times already. So this is a problem, dude. You can't break it down. Because if you try to get in e3, you're going to get smacked by e4. So you can't destroy the wall. There's no way to get this in. Unless you got some kind of very imaginative pawn sacrifice here. it's a problem. And this is why you shouldn't play b3. Don't play b3 in this position. Play something else. I don't care if you play even e3. It's probably better than b3. d4, c4, e4, g3, any of the above. This is bad. Knight f6. And now the guy refuses to build the wall, but still his move isn't bad. Now he should play for e5. He's delaying e5. Why delay e5 anymore? You could just play it. g6, e3, bishop g7, knight c3. Why is this guy not playing e5? His whole position is designed to play e5, and he's like not playing e5. And finally, Asterbate makes the really irrelevant rook c1. Not totally, but 90% irrelevant. And now, of course, we should play e5. Player. Sparkle Horse says white. Sparkle Horse says black. No games. I think I would have had this position against Asterbate already. That's kind of surprising. I don't think the thing's working right. Indexing 248 other players first. Oh well. Alright, forget it. I don't think the thing's working right. Stop. You can stop now. Alright, can you stop now? Waterwolf against Hadush. Rook c1, b6. Alright, fine. Play b6. b6 is okay, but it's not as good as e5. Here, bishop d3. So this is Asterbate's... I don't know, guys. Maybe I will have to open a beer or something. Maybe I can open the window and get some more oxygen in here. It was raining earlier. It may still be drizzling. Alright. New windows aren't as loud as the old ones when it rains. But Asterbate's fetish. Bishop d3, rook c1. The problem is, Asterbate, you got a wall of your own on that diagonal. The bishop doesn't do anything here. This doesn't help, you know. This is a dead end. You know, you're better off just putting the bishop on e2. So you don't block your d-pawn. And you defend the knight on f3 and enable kingside castling. But my preference would be to just go ahead and put it on e2. Black will play e5. And then something like either d4 or maybe queen c2. Queen c2 is not so bad. Queen c2 is probably better than rook c1, and you can even feign castling queenside. Although I don't recommend castling queenside. But the end of the story is this: I don't think that the King's Indian attack is the hedgehog is very effective. Is that effective against King's Indian attack? You know, so you got to do d4, and even that is nothing special, but probably equal. Rook c1 isn't great. Bishop d3 is weird, and now b4. Okay, so at this point, you know, I don't know what you're doing, but I figured you should probably continue your plan. And b4 is really rather random. It looks like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want him to put his knight on c5. Objectively, perhaps it's not such a bad move, but it feels inconsistent. And now black plays bishop takes f3. And that's a big move. I mean, giving up a white square bishop that's powerful on the long diagonal, that feels very dubious for black. So how should we recapture here? After this move, this surprising move, that would definitely not be possible if you had played bishop e2. Because if bishop e2, you're just recapturing with the bishop, and black has given up his bishop for absolutely nothing. So if you take with the queen, the game seems relatively equal after like queen e2. But this is an aggressive move, and it's probably the right thing to do. Since you're not even castled, but anyway, take with the pawn, preserve your bishop, and castle and hide your king on h1. At this point, you're not castling queenside. You can either hide your king on e2 or hide your king on h1, but it should be on a white square where he doesn't have access to the light squares. This is probably a waste of time. And now you found the right move because it was absolutely necessary. Absolute. I said it again. Absolutely necessary. Covering both pawns. Now his knight is going to be driven away by d4 or f4, and white has got some chances. In exchange for his doubled pawns, white has the bishop pair and access to the light squares in the long run. Maybe black should act quickly here and try to act in the center. I mean, do you guys think he could possibly go for it? I don't think putting, in the move a6 is going to help black a lot here, but maybe opening the game would help black. Could he try this? This is kind of double-edged. Black would open the position, but he's also threatening d4 as well as this. So d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, and if knight takes d5, queen takes d5. Acerbate's king is in the center of the board. Black's threatening discoveries on the bishop on b2. Perhaps d4 now, when it's not clear what's really going on. He could even possibly grab this pawn. But I feel like black should try to open the position if possible while white's king is still in the center. At least it's worth considering. He played a6, that's very slow. He played f4. Now his knight's driven back. It should probably go to d7. He puts it on c6 in front of his pawn, which seems very strange given that you have like bishop f3. You have to watch this coming in, right? So you played a3. And now he plays a5. Now he has take threat. So you can keep the tension or play b5. You played b5, he goes back to b8. Only reasonable option. And now you're just better on the white squares, but that doesn't win the game. So I think this is a move worthy of consideration. Black will play rook a7, and it's hard to get the rook back into play. I think you should probably consider doing this. While you won't have a chance to force his rook to that square later, once his knight goes to d7. This is like a one chance only kind of deal. You either do it now or you're not going to get it. Opportunistic move, bishop f3. He probably has to play rook a7. It's pretty ugly. You didn't do it. You played h4, which is not a bad idea to play for h5. And if I'm black here, I think I'm going to play knight d7 and take my chances. His solution to the problem may not be in fact a solution. Because I think, okay, h5 is a little unpleasant, but you're not like checkmating the dude by force or anything. And objectively he's hanging on. So if I was black, I would play knight d7, take my chances, try to hang on, allowing h5, but at least not getting his rook marooned on a7. Instead he plays h5, but what's the problem with h5? This move would probably be okay if he had gotten in, I don't know, e6. But the problem with h5 seems to be that you have f5. And very nice break you executed here. So good job, Acerbate, with the pawn play. You did a good job. You got in f5. You're not normally a specialist with pawn play. This is a very strong move. The classic undoubling of the f-pawns. And that crushes black. Basically, in one move, black is destroyed. This is very, very strong. Clear advantage to white. The g-file. The smashing of the light squares. And game over, man. Now, he makes a good spirited try. I mean, knight here. But I'm a little skeptical. You have this thing again with bishop f3. I'm not, I think you need to train yourself to look for the light squares. Discipled Kaisha, welcome. So when you have a white square bishop, he doesn't have a light square bishop. You want to focus your attention on that color complex, especially. You see this move bishop f3. If knight c3, bishop takes, rook takes, his king is totally in a vacuum. And by the way, he's screwed on rook a8 again. So he probably either has to sack the exchange, which is maybe not a bad idea here, because at least there's some very small glimmer of hope that he could play for knight e5. I think this position is desperate enough for black to do that. Or possibly, again, the horrible rook a7 where his rook is cut off from play, and he's probably totally lost. So I'm not sure this is the best answer. Your knight is extremely poorly placed on a4. That knight is out of the game, just like his rook on a8. This doesn't really help you. While it's good to trade the bishops, I think that's kind of unavoidable for black. The other possibility would be to take, but if you take and he takes here, his bishop's going to get, he doesn't have to take your rook or anything. His bishop's going to come back and defend the kingside. I think that's also viable for you. You've got a very strong kingside attack. So anyway, a lot of options. Knight a4, maybe not best. Takes, queen d7, a reasonable try. And now d3, that's also fine. He should go back to f6. I mean, at least it's sort of close to his king. Black's position is very bad, but I think you should probably play e4 so his queen can't capture on f5. Notice his rook, his knight, because of his queen and the queenside space, this Polish opening, you've essentially cut off his entire army. But knight c5, how is that going to save his king? So this is a really strong move, Asterbate. e4. The point is you don't allow him to take with the queen, and you're basically, it's another kind of I want to say children, but it's the people under the stairs. It's the people under stairs effect on the king's side. His people under the stairs here are the king and the rook on f8. He's totally boxed in. It's over. I mean, you're threatening bishop takes h5. Totally over. His rook has nowhere to go. There's no way for him to evacuate his king. He's completely positionally crushed. c6, this is total desperation. And now many winning moves for white. I like queen d2, rook g1, bishop takes h5, here, rook h8, and now f takes g6. But maybe he's threatening to defend here with queen e8. That would allow him then to bring in the last knight to d7, or possibly use his rook to defend laterally. So here, yeah, this is a good move actually. This is the best move. He can't ignore this. No. Yeah, he can't defend. This is good. He can play f6 and try to block the position. That's his only defense, right? That's what he does. Yeah. And now this is an excellent game by Asterbate. Excellent positional game. It might look like an attacking game, but it's not. This is very strategic. And now you could play d4. But there are many winning moves. That's irrelevant. I don't think you should waste time recapturing here, but pursue your own threats. d4, d5. You win a piece. No. Alright. So you kind of went off the path. So if d4, d takes c4, d5, he has this move queen b5, not losing a piece. That is kind of annoying. So I don't know exactly what you should do in this position. Is it possible there's no ideal solution here? Bishop f5. There's no h6. Well, whatever happens, like, Acerbate has a very strong position and he's probably winning. But I wanted to find a clear way to keep the pin and kind of keep the pressure on black. So the problem is, if we play d4, he takes here, and now he has d5, maybe. So you're saying just like recapture, right? And now we just cannot allow him to get out of the pin. So I was concerned about this, where if we take here, he takes to the queen. This is all very complicated, but we're probably winning material. Or you can play this move, which is really strong, because if pawn takes pawn, we have d5. I just want to win a piece, and it's basically like no counterplay, lights out. You know, I want to keep it clear. What happened in the game is potentially problematic, because we got c takes b5, he gets out of the pin, attacks our knight, and now after takes. The problem is we have a white square bishop, a lot of pawns on white squares, and it's not easy to attack him on the dark squares. We've got to get access here to attack e7. That's what happens. And now maybe black's screwed anyway. He has no checks. So the only move would be like rook e8, and that would give up h6, which is fatal. Alright, Acerbate, good enough. I don't know how far you calculated this, but it seems to work. And you're winning. Oof. Yeah, very nice. That's an excellent game. An excellent game by Acerbate. Alright, thanks for looking at this game with me, guys. Good job. Nefedov is here in the house. I know he's always late. I was late today. By the way, welcome Sexec Draw. I mean Wordcast. I don't want to keep you guys waiting if you're on time. Let me try my glasses. I don't know. Maybe it's my eyes. Maybe it's not. It's not that I have brain fog. Maybe it's just my vision. Maybe my vision is causing me to feel like I have brain fog. Like I have eye strain. I want to see if this theory holds up. Did I get you? I guess not. Did I get your game submission? Is it in there? I guess I didn't. Are you shadow banned? But we got a $15 donation. Guys, we need a new donation goal. Monte Carlo EPT donation goal. Monte Carlo EPT donation goal. Oh wait, this isn't a poker stream. Shit. Donation goal. Guys, I had an idea, and maybe it is brain fog. I had an idea. Acerbate gifted tier 1 sub to Disciple of Kaisha. Oh yeah, I wanted to say that I was invited to an IM tournament. I was thinking about what my next donation goal should be. Like, paying for my next IM tournament, which is like paying for the sunk cost of not working, but it's not going to happen. Because the IM tournament, which should just be like practice for me, would be, check this out. You ready? 9 rounds at 10 o'clock in the morning. The organizer, everything was cool. It was a totally reasonable tournament in February, a month from now. And I was like, yeah, sounds fine. I would consider playing. And then he's like, and then I'm like, what time is the rounds? I was like, what time is the rounds? Is it like last round? I was dreading it would be like last round. No. 1 round a day. 1 round a day at 10 a.m. Because the site, they maybe don't have access after 6 p.m. or something like that. So, or 5 p.m. or something like that. So I was talking about staying at the hotel, the airport hotel. It's near the airport. Ferenc Liszt International Airport. But the problem is I will not play at 10 o'clock in the morning, bro. It's not happening. So I told them that I would only play in the case of like family emergency or death of one of the IMs. I'm now first reserve. Let's just pray none of those dudes drop dead. Luckily, they're all younger than me. All right, so Nefedov versus Slobodyuk. Yuri Slobodyuk. That name looks Ukrainian to me, but I'm not an authority. So I think Nefedov is playing his fellow British Ukrainians in the league. Let me find Kaskas's game here. You must have sent this to me when I was sleeping, bro. I don't know. I missed this one, or your shadow chat banned by the site or something. Copy. All right. Yeah, I didn't see that. That snuck by me. Sex I draw. I'll put it ahead of my own submissions. This is. Forgive me. $15 worth of forgiveness. Alright, this glasses thing seems to help. I think I have eye strain. Alright, anyway. Too much screen time leads to eye strain and feeling like you have brain fog. So I've got Nefedov versus Slobodyuk. This was played, according to Nefedov, Kanak and District League 2. That's a cool sounding name. Forgive Aigdos. Stafford versus Litchfield 2A, my most recent over the board game. Telford. Did you say you live in Telford? Why is that in my mind? Alright, I know you play for Stafford, right? Nefedov organizes grooming gangs. No Telford. What was Telford? That's one of the cities where they're having these like Elon Musk grooming gang scandals now. But I'm thinking there was some connection with Telford. I don't know anything about British towns or the towns in the UK. I know nothing. I know Stafford because of you. And what was Telford? Was Telford a thing? Or is that just something I read in the news and has nothing to do with you? Somehow I was connecting you with Telford, but maybe the names just sound similar. Okay, so this is Nefedov with white, e4. His opponent plays e5. I played knight f3. He played d6. And I'll tell you, I tried, and I'm a terrible Philidor player, I don't know what I'm doing, but I tried a couple times to play the Philidor against Nefedov, and it didn't go great. I think he handles the white side of the Philidor pretty well. And I just don't think the Philidor is a great opening. But it has its advocates or adherents. When I was younger, I don't know why, I used to like to play bishop c4 in blitz, but it's kind of, as I've changed, I've realized that I mean, the main point is to destroy the black center. If he's going to play the Hannum variation, though, with knight d7, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't destroy his center. If he plays the Hannum, he plays it. Although here you could play bishop c4 rather than knight c3. I've been doing a lot of these. And the advantage of not having your knight on c3 is that you can play like c3 instead, reinforcing the center, and then playing more like a Spanish kind of thing with a knight on d2, or I don't know what to call it, but anyway, I like this for white, for example, rather than doing the automatic this, you know, I think it's even better to play like bishop c4 here, with the idea of c3. Now the one question would be like, what about the exchange variation? How good is the exchange variation with a knight on d7? It's kind of weird, you know. I mean, black's normally not committing that knight to d7 and then playing the exchange variation. I have the feeling that's slightly inaccurate for black for some reason. Wow, Novikov Ochotnik, 1999. That's weird. I thought that Novikov was definitely living in the States in 1999. Maybe he would go back to Ukraine. He's back in Ukraine. He's back in Ukraine now. I like how Novikov plays for the United States in the World Senior Teams, but he lives in Kiev. That's fun, right? I was talking to him. He's a nice guy. He's working... It sounds like a bad joke, but he's working as a travel agent and lives in Ukraine. This is kind of sick, though. If you're 2600, you've won many strong international tournaments, and you've got to work as a travel agent. He started working as a travel agent in Brooklyn, apparently. Irina Krush's parents are like travel agents, and Igor got on board. And he started transition to being like a travel agent. So anyway, interesting chess occupation stories. E takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and now bishop e7. So this is a proper exchange variation. But I only know a little bit about the exchange Philidor, and from what I've known, the main line is bishop e2, and the main idea for white is to play for f4, bishop f3. So castles, rook e8, f4, bishop f8, bishop f3. That's one way to play. Now another way to play is bishop f4, and this is a neat idea that I only discovered 10 years ago. It was a little too subtle for me, and I was never really an e4 player. But I like this. I used this against Rosenthalis with black. The bishop looks kind of stupid here because it's just hitting this rock, but it's sort of a prophylactic approach. You might castle queenside, but the bishop puts pressure on the pawn chain, which means black has trouble playing like c6 or d5. So he can't really do any. It sort of freezes him from doing anything. And you sometimes have threats of e5. That's another good plan. And then finally, we have the old g3. But there's a problem with g3 because it can get very complicated. Black can blast the center with d5. Here you see Carlsen Magnus against Mamedyarov 2012. So these things get very crazy, you know, after you have to know what you're doing. Like e5. I had games with one of the players in the team, or in the weekly tournaments we had here. A bunch of games. Look at player Sparkle versus White, indexing 70 other players. Whatever, dude. Forget it. Waste of time. Alright. So Nefyadov, one other thing I'm going to suggest here, and it's going to be featured later in the stream, but bro, you have the Slaggy attack, the Slaggy gambit, The refutation of the Philidor with G4. Now, great minds think alike, and I invented this on my own. But after I played it, and I've played it on the stream before, it turns out, wow, the only other game where this was ever played, guess who played it in 2005? Hikaru played it against Exchange Philidor aficionado Popovich Dusan the Great. So, and Dusan lost. He played really badly against it and lost really badly. But the funny thing is, Hikaru, and I believe in this gambit. I think it's sound. And I borrowed it kind of from Shirov because, Shirov, in a way, gave me the idea in the normal lines with this, and this. And, Alexei invented the bayonet gambit with G4. So I thought, if G4 is effective in the thing, well, let's try to do G4 here. We can do G4 here. It's also possible in Najdorf. The best move is probably knight takes G4, but Popovich takes with the bishop. I'll show you later a game I played. Bishop E2. Yeah, this is the right idea. Not F3, although F3 is playable as well. I think Hikaru's on the right track. And then most people will take, but anyway, it's all very interesting. I'll show you guys later the refutation of the Exchange Philidor. Bishop E7 from Nefedov's opponent. And now Nefedov, you played F3. And now, while F3 looks like a good move, we play F3. Where are we castling? Castle kingside, castle queenside, or wait and see. I am concerned about black hitting us back with D5. Maybe it can't be played right away. Thanks again to Saxac Draw with a donation. Disciple of Kaisha Prismchek and Hertugvag Banio. Love these names I can't pronounce. Thanks guys for following. So what's the refutation of F3? Why is F3 not a standard move here? Why is no one talking in the chat? Let's see some interaction here. Channel points. Again, I like Bishop F4. I like G3. I like Bishop E2. I like the Gambit G4. You have a lot of options here. And other moves are possible. But something about F3, I just wonder why is that move not on the top 6 moves list? So what's wrong with F3 here? In the Sicilian, it would normally be like D5. But if F3, D5, what happens if F3, D5, E5? F3, D5, E5. Only one game. Now black played knight G8. That's suspect. What about knight D7? Well, that doesn't look healthy. Probably. I'm going to assume this isn't good. Although remember, he has this like center of his own coming at you. Coming back at you. So 900 games here? No, 30 games here only. Wow. Nefedov refuting the Philidor with F3. F3 is to cancel opponent's opening prep. Well, but I mean, I just can't figure out the refutation of F3. This is a very serious thing. Why have only 33 people played F3? I mean, if you want to cancel his opening preparation, you could play a lot of things, like, I don't know, knight B3 or something, you know. You could play A4, your favorite move. There's a lot of random stuff you could do. But F3 is a very natural move, but I'm thinking there has to be something bad about F3, or else like more people would have played it, you know. And normally it's D5, but it's apparently not good in this position. D5, E5, knight G8, as the guy played. Now this is unstoppable. c5. What's up here? White's significantly better. It's not 100% clear, but it looks like if you do f4, for example, like you're saying in the Caro-Kann, the evolve says, yeah, there's a Caro-Kann element to the position, sure. This is playable, as strange as it looks, like an Alekhine with knight g8. That's actually playable. But I still think there must be something better. So 30 players castled. Your opponent castled? No, he didn't. But what's the point now? Are we threatening d5 yet? So if you're going to play f3, how are you going to continue here? With g4, you're going to go nuts? Because bishop e3 has a really bad score. Check that out. That's not good. Again, I can't copy and paste, but white's score after bishop e3 is not good. That's a very bad sign. So after bishop e3, if you put your bishop here, you're going to see forks. I see pawn forks with d5, d4. So you can't put the bishop on e3. So how do you follow up your f3 if you can't play bishop e3? That seems to be the point. So that's the problem, Houston. Black is getting to the center too quickly. And this is why, essentially, f3 is not so good. Okay. So you just don't have a follow-up. You know, you have no way. I mean, g4 is too much. Bishop e3 is not good. What are you going to do? You know, bishop c4, trying to stop d5, and black goes c6. This is your best move. Black plays c6. You can, like, play bishop e3 or something. And then, you know, so we're playing this waiting game. If you ever try to play bishop e3, you're going to get smacked by d5. I assume. Rook e8, here's a game. If bishop e3, you're smacked. You know, it's already bad. So you got a castle kingside. Siganovic. Anyway, alright, so we see the downside of f3. f3 is not so good, but the opponent has to know what they're doing. And your opponent didn't know what he was doing. So you played bishop e7, f3, and you played a6. And that's not it's not a kraken. It looks like a kraken, but he's missing his e pawn. So every little move might change the position slightly. a6 isn't the worst move. Bishop e3 still looks problematic. Nefedov doesn't fall for that. Yeah, you played a4, which is reasonable. This dude, Pavel, interestingly, because only Pavels play this position with white. The other Pavel played bishop e3 in 2000. But again, one has to ask oneself, what are we doing? Because this avalanche is coming, you know, eventually. You know, it's even possible Black could play c5 right away and get his piece back. Wherever you go, you know, where are you going to go? Ghostbusters. You're still going to lose the piece back at the end of the day. Yeah, so a6 isn't that horrible, actually. It's not the best, but a4 is better than, you improved on Pavel 2, Pavel 1. a4 is better than playing bishop e3, which plays right into d5. And so now he does this, which is, I mean, I don't know what I would do. I think I would play castle. He should probably castle, and I think he wants to keep d5 in play. You know, this is really important. Without d5, well, there are other plans, like Saxon Drossing. c6 is another plan, absolutely. But you know, but the dynamic d5, c5 is what you really want. If you play c6, you can't play c5 as easily. I like this. This is fine. a6 isn't so bad. But I think I would castle. And maybe another option is knight b5. Knight c6 is maybe not that horrible for black. But this move I'm a little skeptical of. That puts the kibosh on, as they say. I would say double pasha. Yeah, who do I know recently that's named Pasha? No, I knew a guy. Oh, he was a Bulgarian. There was this guy Pasha. He used to hang out with my poker friends. All right, Pasha the Bulgarian. He was a terrible poker player. Bishop d7. Seemed like a nice guy though. So this puts the kibosh on d5, and that means you can play bishop e3. Uh-oh. But a4 takes away queenside castling. So there's like some limitations here for both sides. White really shouldn't castle queenside, but black can't really play d5. So Pasha can play maybe a caveman like g4 attack on the king side. Knight c6, queen d2, and now black trades pieces, which doesn't really change too much. White has a spatial advantage thanks to his e4 pawn. Bishop takes, and now black decides to castle, which is reasonable. And my first reaction is to go nuts, but I don't know, dude. I don't know. I don't really think you're in the business of playing g4 here. White has a slight edge. You have to watch b5. You have to watch. Sorry, this is a mouse slip. You have to watch counterplay. You're trying to contain black. You're trying to gain a slow spatial grip on the position. You're not trying to necessarily play for a mate here. You need to get your king to a safe position, which means castling kingside. I don't like castling queenside ever after a4. You can leave your king in the center a little bit, but you should be intending to castle kingside. Now bishop c4 looks good. Wow. So this is all part of the plan. You can play this. You've got to watch b5. You can play this, and honestly that looks like the thing to do. I think if I had I really, I think this move is playable, but you have to watch these b5s because the back row, in fact on bishop here he might even have b5 anyway, come to think of it. He might have a pawn sec. If you want to, Pavel or Pasha, whichever you prefer, you can play a5, and I think a5 is decent because now that kills b5. This is ugly, obviously. He might have some kind of Mamajarov-esque tricky move, like, I don't know, c5 and try to take the pawn, but black would remain with a bad structure. So my guess would be a5 for white to limit the possibilities of b5, or you just allow b5. But instead you played the insane queen g5. Now this is really nuts. A very principled move. It looks crazy, but it's maybe not as crazy as it looks. However, knight e8, queen g3, bishop h4, probably not the best continuation in the world. So, what's your plan after this obvious move? This is not really a good idea. You can put your queen on h5, but ultimately, like, without the square g3, it's kind of hard to see what the hell white is doing. You probably need to rethink your whole plan. And the sensible thing to do here would be to go back where you came from, and then try a different move if he goes back here. Queen g5 is kind of crazy. So Nefedov lost control, self-control. He played queen g5. And other moves, black has rook e8. Doesn't this make some sense? Or this is your point, I guess. It's sort of a cheapo. If he plays rook e8, you have knight d5, overloading him. So file under cheapo. He could also play h6. What do you do on h6? That looks problematic, because now this move, knight h5, maybe this is your plan. You're going to try some creepy sort of moving forward. Black could also play other moves like bishop e6 or bishop c6 to control d5. This is crazy. Queen g5, c5. Oh my god. Where is my dark square bishop? So this is a direct attempt to refute it. Wow. Nefedov lost his self-control with that queen g5. Maybe too many brown beers the night before with a team. You've been hanging out with Arsenal fans, chess drinking team or something. Yeah. No, I don't know why you didn't just play a solid move here. Black really doesn't have any counterplay. He doesn't have this. I mean, you could try it, right? Asterbait would play it. Asterbait would definitely play d5. But I mean, you know, I'm not buying this, really. It's interesting, though, isn't it? It's possible this sort of sack would work, isn't it? It's not that crazy to sack the pawn with d5. But on e5, knight e8, we can take this pawn. That really doesn't look okay for black. I guess d5 doesn't work. So I like a5. You went here. This is really bad. c5, and now you took because of the discovered threats, and you lost your dark square bishop. That's a pretty important piece. So you traded your left arm for a kidney or something like that, you know. I'm not sure that's a good exchange. What do you guys think? Left arm for kidney? It depends, you know. I'll take the kidney for 500. You know, the UK kind of struggling economically. We might need to sell some organs. But this exchange of pieces, you know, he has a backward pawn, but man, your dark square bishop was your best piece. So this is not really, we're not really happy about that. You come back, and black has compensation for his backward pawn, obviously. Now, but he should probably play something sane. One suggestion is bishop e6. I don't want to see your light square bishop showing up on c4. Another suggestion is b5. And if you take this pawn, all hell's breaking loose on the queen side. b5 takes, rook takes a8, queen takes a8, and black's threatening b4. If you take this pawn, I mean, there's no guarantee. I can't guarantee your safety. It's like being a UK MP or something. Elon Musk could have you eliminated at any moment. Or his minions. This doesn't look safe, boys and girls. So I'm not taking that pawn. After queen d2, black, though, played this. Which is fine. That's fine. But at the same time, black's only threat is b5. So I thought maybe Nefedov would go with this. The old sort of King's Indian way of preventing b5, but it's a little awkward. Rook a3 should definitely be considered. But I think your move is okay too. And this way you trade queens. And the main point is b2 pawn, not such a big deal. So queen takes, thank you for trading queens. King takes. If he takes the pawn, we have rook b1 followed by knight b6, which that may not be enough. He doesn't take the pawn. I'm gonna need to see analysis on this move. What do? We play rook b1 or rook a2. Rook b1. Bishop has to go back. Maybe f6. I don't know. But if you snap the pawn on b7, I'm not really sure what's happening here. There's this, knight b6, bishop c6, rook c7. Looks like we're winning material. But there's also here. And I think this looks like you gotta go knight takes, bishop check, and I don't like this a4 pawn dropping. But maybe we have the fork. Where do we put the rook? Here? But it's equal. You know, the position appears to be about equal. So I got a message here. Hate mail? Move 11 with a late submission. Yeah, anyway, Nefyadov, interesting. You got out of it comfortably with a little bit of luck. But the final evaluation, if he pulls the trigger on bishop takes b2, isn't that clear to me. I don't think you're really better. It's probably around equal. The engine has a line. There is a line. Rook b1. He could try bishop e5, by the way. There seems to be one variation where you're better. Bishop f6, knight takes f6, check, g takes f6. Rook takes. This isn't easy to calculate. Bishop takes a4. Black is up a pawn. But after the final move, bishop c4, it's quantity not as valuable as quality. Nefyadov's quality is better. Quality of pawns. Quality of life. But still black has good chances to hang on. Anyway, he should do it, I think. But he plays this... Okay. He plays this safe move, let's call it. Bishop d8. Still, this is okay. You have a5. But you don't have to play that right away. If bishop a5 check, you can meet bishop a5 check with c3. Okay, so bishop c4. If bishop a5 check, c3. But what about like stuff like b5? I mean, this is... I felt like, you know, this would be a little bit clearer. But again, that pawn becomes a liability. Black can break with f5. So another move you need to consider here, Pavelito, or Pablo, my friend Paul, he spent time in Spain, so he always went by Pablo, or Pablito. He's in LA now, actually. Guys, I should check to see if he's alright. I don't have a lot of friends in LA, but the wildfires are out of control. G4, Pablito, stopping the counterplay with f5 needs to be considered. This is a candidate move, right? Definitely a candidate move. Of course, G5 is open. So you need to consider a lot of options here. Bishop c4, and now black should consider the classic king h8. If king h8, I recommend g4 even more than ever for Pablito. I'm going to limit that counterplay with f5. It's not essential, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. But this move, kind of lame. If you trade the light square bishops, comfortable, and you did h4. h4. Now he's not threatening f5, but h4, preventing bishop g5, not a bad move. Then our coward opponent chickens out with bishop takes d5, and we have my favorite type of position. Opposite colored bishops and rooks. Oh, this is juicy. And at this point, you know, we order some brown beers for the hotel room, or whatever we're staying, the hostel, California, and we get ready to grind. Bishop takes d5. This may or may not be an active threat. because of the counterplay against b2. But I think most people are going to play this, or b8. Now again, a5 is an option, but that pawn becomes fixed on a5 and is a liability in and of itself to some extent. Is black threatening b5, or will access to the a file override that? So Pavel plays g4. This is reasonable. Stopping f5. Well, f5 already can't be played. So I think what we need to talk to ourselves here is A, how to limit any kind of counterplay. B, how to slowly improve the position, what the general plan is. We need a schematic about how we're going to win this game. If we're going to win this game, how are we going to win it? So I think that black is going to put his king on h8. Or possibly, you know what's interesting? He could play h5 followed by g6. And one thing that I didn't think about, what Pavel does here, that's actually pretty smart, he prevents the opponent from playing h5, which might be a good start, in fact. So after g4, it's kind of counterintuitive, but I mean, should black maybe consider g6? Is this crazy or smart? Should we consider g6? And if we do play g6, with the idea of putting the king on g7, would our hero play g5 or h5? I think g6 is a logical move. This is extremely passive, leaving our king really out of play, but nevertheless an option. So g4 stops h5. Black plays bishop f6. That's kind of a dead end. And now we expect c3. If bishop e5, we have very strong move, king e3, and looks devastating. He could play bishop f6 and then g6, though. Maybe. So maybe that's his plan. You played rook b1, and now you played b5. Yeah, I don't like rook b1. You know, your rook has got that threat of invading along the a file, and that's stopping him from playing b5. So if you play c3, you're probably wondering about this, and that's a good question. But if he takes with the pawn, your rook is invading on the 7th. You can deal with his pressure, probably like here or something. He can't get in here. So I think I prefer c3 to rook b1. Now he can play b5, and you don't have the a file. Now you played f4, and now it's basically like this dude has to play g6. You have to play g6. He should have played g6 anyway, you know, to go here, or maybe even put his king on g7. I don't know. Anyway, it's a good idea to put his pawns on light squares. White's better, but he doesn't play g6, he plays this. What's that? Could white play for a5? Yeah, but I mean, you could, but anytime that's kind of... Well, I mean, you couldn't in this position. He could have played it earlier, played a5. The issue with a5 is, like, then the bishop stays on d8 and keeps your rook tied down to it, and you're saying play... Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff that happens. If you play a5, then you have to be tied down to a5, then you have to play b4 in order to defend a5, then, you know, black opens the c file and starts threatening. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that happens if you play a5. It's very committal. And yes, it needs to be considered, but I think Nefedov was right not to do it. But I don't understand why not play c3 here. You know, there's one thing you could say, well, what if b5 and he takes with the rook, attacking b2? But I mean, I think that we can handle, you know, in many different ways. You could play b3. You could play king c2. You can play rook b1. No, actually you can't, but you can play rook a2, obviously. But meanwhile, he ends up with an isolated pawn on a6. Can you give some good recommendations against the king's Indian attack? Ooh, I'm thirsty. Sorry, bad timing. Yeah, we're in the middle of analysis, but I will think that over. Yeah, anyway. This is a really bad move. What does it do? What does bishop e7 do? Now Nefertov can go reclaim the a file, which he does. I mean, honestly, all right, let's say black played the right move, g6. You know, you could still do the right thing, as they say. Probably like c3. Black would probably play b4, and then you would go king up. But at the end of the day, I think Nefertov is still threatening to... He's just like lost some time doing the right thing, but he's still threatening to do the right thing. You know, the only question would be, could Black rely on some kind of counterplay, getting his own stuff going on? This looks pretty dangerous. Black's really stuck. So it looks good. After bishop e7, he has no counterplay, and rook d8 doesn't help. But I mean, what can Black do now? I think he might be lost. He's got like the worst of both worlds now. All that ended up getting him no counterplay. Bishop f6 was just a waste of time. White just got the a file for nothing. And what do? You know, you're basically screwed. He has no place to put his bishop now. King f8 is the plan. If you double rooks on the 7th, it's over. So you can play the other rook to the a file now. Now here I would freak out. I hope your opponent is like a little kid. G5 is a perfectly good move, but your opponent offered a draw after f6. If this was my simul, I would like resign now and ban them from my stream. If somebody offered me a draw here with f6, they better be like a 7-year-old kid, because if it's an adult, I'm gonna like lose my shit. This is where I start doing the Alexander Ivanov, and I wouldn't do it normally, but if you offer a draw now, every time I make a move, I'm gonna start like screwing the pieces into the squares like this, you know. When I play rook c7, screw it in. Then I bring the other rook over to the other side. I'm going to screw that in. But if it's a 7-year-old kid, okay, he doesn't know that he's lost. But this is horrible. Yeah. So it's over. Unless he can somehow just keep pestering you with, like, threats of exchanging rooks. But I think that'll only last so long. Is that allowed, TA? Okay. What we can do is sit the bishop on e6 and then put the rook on c7. Well, let's see. Can Black perpetually threaten an exchange of rooks to stay alive? So I think Pavel should put his king here, by the way. That looks pretty good. King on c4. Rather than go to e3, king d3, and this is a nice solid square. You could threaten to walk in there, you know, later if you move your bishop to e6, get the king in on d5. You're safer on the white squares. You put your king on his color complex. Probably doesn't matter here. And now, maybe Pavel can finish him with an exchange sacrifice. My thematic. Well, this is a long process. So we ended up like going over on this side. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you may be like, it might be easier to play like bishop e6. But I guess the point is if you go there, then again he'll threaten rook a8. So if I do bishop e6, Black's almost in Zugzwang here, by the way. What the hell does he play? I mean, I guess king e8. Anyway, he's lost. He's lost. King e8. That wasn't the game. King g4. Rook c8, h5. That's good enough. Alright. Here, 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 here. Game over. Alright. Nothing to see here, folks. It's a 7-year-old because he didn't resign down a piece, after all. You get the TD? Looking up the screwing the pieces rule. I would only do it if it was someone who, like, you know, did something to deserve it. That's my point, sex act draw. You have to offer repeated draw first. I never, like, behave badly unless it's, like, justified. Alright. Well, anyway. You beat the 7-year-old. Nice job. So we got Astrobate. Snetsnake, are you here? I get it, you know. I mean, I don't know what Ivano's rule about it was. He just loved his position. It was like playing to the gallery, you know. He was emphasizing the strength of his moves, you know. He didn't do it with malice. He just loved the moves so much, he needed to highlight them by screwing me into the board. In my case, it would be malice directed against my opponents. You know the other thing I like to do? This is really mean, but once in a while, you'll get the opponent who, like, won't resign in, like, a lost position. Sometimes there'll be some situation where, just to be funny, I'll have, like, 2 moves, maybe with the same piece, and, like, one of them, like, loses by force, and the other one just wins. And your opponent, you know your opponent sees the one that loses, and you, like, you move like you're gonna make the losing move. I like to do this. I'll hover my hand over the, like, losing square, and then look at my opponent and smile, and, like, put it back over, like, you know. It's like slow rolling, but again, I would only do that if it was somebody who was doing something bad, like not resigning in a totally lost position. Yeah, it was sadistic behavior, but it has to be justified. I won't just do that to innocent opponents, you know. I have done it before, but it was always for a reason. You know, the little kid or the person that offered you draw 5 times, or, you know, the people banging the clock, or, you know, some other like really stupid behavior. Then I'm open to total sadistic, you know, stuff. But yeah, that's the kind of mean thing I've done. All right. Anyway, I wanted to show you guys. What do we got here? I want to show you guys the Snetsnake game. I'm hoping Snetsnake shows up. He's still not here. We got word Kaskas. All right, Nefedov, easy peasy. Nefedov avoided that 7-year-old's preparation. Good job with F3. So E4, knight F6. I didn't realize it was a 7-year-old. There's this 1800 thinks he's now that. He's getting me out of theory by playing King's Indian Attack. King's Indian Attack is very standard. Lots of good ways to deal with that. So, alright, what are we doing? That's like the most standard club opening. So this is sack draw. But I got to get my description of what this game is again. So what did you say? Is this an online game? Jesus Christ. Laptop, what are you doing? Dude, where did it go? Oh no. I lost my... What the hell just happened here? I just, like, my window just closed for no reason. So what are we playing? Black here? This was submitted. Oh, move 11 just submitted. Oh no. Oh no. Sirwan Hardarson. Robert Hardarson, some Icelandic FIDE master. Used to play here in Budapest in the early 2000s. Let's see. Get PGN. That's a kind of mismatch. Copy. Play. Master versus amateur. Well, he's a strong amateur. Okay. Learn, study. My studies. Yeah, okay. So word cast what? OTB from last night. Last night. Wow. All right. You're playing the Aliakin defense, right? Milakine. Yeah, knight c3 is annoying if you want to play the Aliakin. I used to play d5 all the time, but the Vienna isn't that good, so I would give serious consideration to e5 if you can play it. I mean, if you can play it, the best move for black is e5. Probably white's best against that, I guess, is, well, obviously, you know, transposing to the 4 knights. Or bishop c4 maybe. But if you don't want to play a classical opening, okay, fine, yeah, d5. And then white takes. I had one of these the other day. Yesterday, in fact. Bishop c4, have fun defending. I just want to point out that white has a 0. White has, like, no... White has achieved equal score in this variation, based on 1,844 games. Not something I'd be too worried about. It's not a bad move, but I don't think that white gains an advantage. You can't gain an advantage with the Vienna. It's equal. I try to be objective. I'm not lying to you. You know, maybe most people play badly, but masters are not afraid of that line. This is black's best move, period, end of story. But d5 is the more interesting. And then white plays usually e5. That's the best. Usually e5 is the best. Do you know how old the theory of bishop c4 is? That's one of the like most known openings in the history. That position is one of like the most oldest known positions in the history of chess. You know how ancient this variation is? Not a lot of new ideas here to discover, really. That's the problem. Alright, so I like it, it's fine, but it's not the best. So d5, e takes d5. The guy played this against me yesterday. That's a lame move. I played queen takes d5, my opponent played d4, and here I played e5, equalizing. And now my opponent played pawn takes pawn, and what do? If you're black and you want to win, and you're my friend Sultan Varga, he won this position with black. Dude, you gotta play queen takes queen check. This is my game from yesterday against some random noob. Grandmaster doesn't play queen takes e5 going into an equal endgame. We're going to be a pawn down temporarily, but e5 is very weak. Anyway, just a sidebar. Knight takes d5 is a terrible move, obviously. Okay, you did this. I have a very funny thing to comment here. Sac draw. I almost played this move yesterday, and then I talked myself out of it. I said, no. I'm not going to play this move. It's not correct. It's not good enough. You know, what it is basically this is a Scotch, what's it called? Danish Gambit reversed. This is not good enough. Harry Lyman used to play this type of stuff at the Boylston Chess Club, like 1990 when I arrived in Blitz. You play like a Gambit in reverse. Of course, you can play it, and it's playable. But it wouldn't be my first choice, you know. Depends on how strong your opponent is. You can get away with this reverse goring, yeah. The goring is shaky and just good enough as white. So by definition, if it's just barely good enough as white, why would we play it as black? I mean, you're going to have a pretty weak opponent to get away with this crap. So, yeah, it's only been 20 years. Doodle-la-la. I haven't been for 20 years, but it's cool. Knight takes c6. Anyway, don't do this against strong players. So objectively, you have to take and play, but it's fine. Most people will play bishop c4. I've experimented with different stuff. One of the things is this bishop e6. This guy Konstantin Maslak, he lost here, but he's one of the few people who play the knight f6 Scandinavian. Oh, Igor Smirnov. Oh, that's great. It's 0.6. It's not the end of the world. Really? This is 0.6? I don't know if it is, you know. That's not sure. I don't know. It depends on what computer you got fired up. I'm at 0.9. You know, this is basically a pawn down. At higher depths it is. I would never play this ever in a tournament game against anybody rated over 1800. I think you gotta have personal kind of line, you know. I would play the Goring Gambit, but I wouldn't play it a tempo down. This is too coffee house for a tournament play against players over 2000. I just don't see why, you know, why you don't just play the normal move. Anyway, he has to take the pawn. There's really no option here, I think, to decline this. It's like the Smith-Morra. In many cases, one has the option to decline a gambit, but in this position, what possible move does he have to decline this gambit? d4 it's inferior. If he takes the pawn, he has an advantage. If he doesn't take the pawn, he has no advantage at all. So there's no question. There's no good way to decline this. I don't know, Saxec draw. I kind of disagree. I feel like, okay, he's been surprised. I will get this position a lot of times out of a different move order. So e4, d5 takes, knight f6, and then people play knight c3. But okay, he's been surprised by the Alekhine. He didn't want to play e5. He played knight c3. But this could also be a dunst opening. You know, I felt like this isn't necessarily like people playing for a draw. Again, like very weak players. You've never been to my stream before, I guess. So d4, c takes d4. White already has no advantage. He's playing the Rogozin. He's now playing the Rogozin with an extra move. And then Knight f3, bishop g4. I'm not sure about bishop g4. I thought about this. You could even play a6. There's a Plotkin game there. Victor Plotkin. The master of draws. Anyway. Technically, bishop e5, this is probably the best. We're playing a Rogozin in reverse. Bishop g4 is okay, but you're going to have to take. It's a crappy Slav exchange. This is not a Slav exchange. This is not a Slav exchange, man. The Slav exchange is symmetrical structure. That's completely a disaster. But this is like a Queen's Gambit exchange variation with reverse colors. No, it's not worse. I mean, you have chances to win. It's an imbalanced pawn structure. You don't want a totally symmetrical pawn structure. That's the worst. Here it's better than that. You know, you have a normal exchange variation. But technically this is usually like a Rogozin in reverse. White should play h3, and now what are you going to do? You're going to have to seriously consider taking. And after takes, queen takes, the position is probably very level. I've had a number of games like this. Magnus Carlsen ain't losing with white. But bishop e3 looks bad. This is a bad move. This gives you time. So, serious inaccuracy by white. I think you should probably play knight to c6, but it feels like you're avoiding bishop e5 or something. Okay, it doesn't matter that much. You can't win with black by force. White should definitely play h3. By the way, if you play knight c6 and he plays h3, maybe you could consider backing off. This is risky, but I think that you're fine. Maybe you shouldn't avoid this. I think taking is probably necessary if he goes right away. Now you played bishop e4. So I don't know. I don't know about bishop e4. Why not, though? I don't have a problem with this move. But what's the plan? Are you going to take? You're going to take. And then he's going to have some play here. We're going to have to defend our b7 pawn. Give up both bishops for knights, maybe. And try to play with two knights against two bishops. Castle. Castle. He plays knight e5. And now if you trade, he takes with the knight. And the position is pretty dead. But what about taking here? Then he would take on g4. And if you try to take on b2, he'll win your b7 pawn. But you do have to watch c4. Well, I mean, your knight could benefit from delaying its movement, to do this kind of thing. But this is interesting. He goes knight e5, you played bishop f5. Now, the reason to do this is because you're going to get him out of that pin, or whatever you call it, the threat of bishop takes c3. He's going to simply take with a knight, then play c3, and then do the standard sort of knight back here, knight back here. Position is very equal. Not completely equal, though. You have a minority attack, and he has f4, f5. That's why it's not a Slav exchange variation. At the end of the day, there's pawn dynamics in this position. That means there's ways for black and white to play for an edge, because the pawn structure is not symmetrical. But your decision here, you need to consider all three options. Bishop f5 is probably the riskiest. Some people might go crazy and start doing like g4, This is probably okay for you and weakens his king size slightly, but I'm not sure it's necessarily bad. He might be able to get away with this. He could try to play for f4, f5. It looks pretty crazy, but I wouldn't be completely surprised if someone did that. But instead, okay, you've got the 1800. He's clearly intimidated, or he's, you read the opponent basically. He's going for the exchange. You trade. He takes for the queen, and now you play knight f d7. This e4 square. He also has, it's like a Caro-Kann now. He has queen b5 in some positions. His bishop is bad. But I'm surprised by this move because you're not really developing your pieces. I would expect the other knight. And obviously you can also go to c6 because this isn't necessarily bad. I mean, that's okay. That would actually change the pawn structure, make it more imbalanced. And that means that you might have different plans now with more pawns in the center. Of course, he doesn't have to take. But if he goes with f4, you have the e4 square. This is really what I was kind of hoping for, that we could get some kind of really big advantage based on white allowing e4 to go long term. Only a weak player is going to let that happen, but it's conceivable. Now if f4, for example, you don't have access to e4, you don't have any pieces, he could play f4 here. And what are you going to do? In fact, maybe we can make an argument that we should make the argument that he should seriously consider playing f4. What are you going to do? Are you going to play f5? It's something to consider. If you play f6, you could get in trouble because there could be some kind of levers with like f5. If this happens, is there any case where like that might be annoying? Here you can probably take, and you're still like good knight versus bad bishop. Black isn't worse. But I think these are the kind of things you need to think about. I was a little surprised by this move. And now knight f3. And I'm very surprised by that move. White is like a weaker player. By definition should be like wanting to trade pieces. I'm surprised to see him retreat his knight back to f3. That seems really kind of dumb, Either he supports it or he trades it off with knight takes d7. I mean, the safest move is knight takes d7. He's one trade closer to a draw, basically. You're fine. Queen takes, knight c6, and black is at least equal. You can still outplay this guy. But the retreat back to f3 seems sus. Now knight e2, okay. And then the standard kick you out. You went back to e7. But I think we need to start thinking minority attack now. Expect c3, and we need to break in with b5, b4 on the queen side. So moving the bishop is fine. We need to think about where to go, though. And there's three options. You can go here. You could even go to a5. Four options. Here. d6 is a bit more active. This will promote his exchange of pieces, though. I think you probably thought about that. There's also rook e8, which looks kind of strange, but you could bring the bishop back to f8, maybe. Not out of the question. Maybe you want to watch this knight g5 thing. For example, rook e8, knight g5, g6, and then you can bring your bishop back to the queen, from the queen side to the king side. But this move right away, stopping knight g5, you're probably looking at that. He plays c3, and now you played a6. Yeah, playing b5 is the right plan. If you play rook b8, you have a conundrum. So that always happens. Queen c7 doesn't help. See, the problem is now if you play a6, he should play a4. And you have this situation I've had many times on the black side of the Caro-Kann. This is basically a Caro-Kann exchange variation, has been for a million moves. How do you play b5? If you could only play b5 and your knight wasn't hanging, you'd have queen takes b5, rook b8, and rook takes b2. If only you could trap his queen or something. If only your knight was defended. Well, I mean, if he plays a4, maybe, but let's see if we can get this b5 in any other way. So I was thinking if your queen was on c7, he has bishop there. Okay, bishop f4. Queen c8 is awkward, but you would be threatening b5. However, if he's awake, he'll see this anyway. You know? So, it's hard to sneak b5 past him. a6, and now the question is, if a4, sometimes they'll do this kind of counterintuitive expansion. You're saying knight a5. Naturally, this is for sure a plan. Of course, it's the beginning. Yeah, that's true. You have knight c4, then you'll have b5. You're still not threatening b5 yet, but you will be. But if you play knight c4, if you play knight c4 and he plays b3, what do you do? Where do you put your knight? So let's just say he makes a good move here. Well, he has this too, actually. So for example, knight d2, now, you know, he's stopping knight c4, he's stopping b5. So what do you do? Rook c8, okay. Now what does he do? Some kind of sensible move. I don't know, rook e1. Now, are you going to play knight c4? And if you do, he takes it. What do? Take with a rook? He can still play b3. Now he has somewhat of a backward pawn. You can move your rook back, use some pressure here. But he still managed to stop you from playing b5. White is only a tiny, tiny bit worse. Stuff like queen c7, yeah. Yeah, it's reasonable. Alright, rook a d1. And this is so his bishop can go back here, maybe? I thought about this. But again, he shouldn't allow b5 for free. He allowed you to play b5 for free. And he has perhaps the idea of knight a5, knight c4, bishop c1. But he should have stopped b5. And now g3, I really don't get it. He's weakening his light squares. And then you just play b4. And I think this is fine. Playing b4 is fine. But there are other ways to go. You know, like you were saying. You could experiment with stuff like knight a5. Maybe build up more. I think b4 is fine. And then, tough call for white now. You know, he's worse. He's worse, but this is an option. This is an option. I mean, he's gonna change the structure. So takes. Your knight is hanging. Rook c8 is not an option. Queen b6 is not an option. So knight a5, that's mildly unfortunate because it's on the side of the board. But your other knight, I want to secure d5. You want to make sure that there's no way white gets d5 in. Queen d3, and now knight b6. You could also play knight f6, but that would be maybe allowing another move, like bishop g5. If you go here, he could play bishop g5. With knight b6, there's no bishop g5. There's knight f4, and you're better after knight d5. It's not winning, but you're better. Knight b6, and then white plays the next move in his plan, which, you know, this doesn't remind me of the kind of guy who was like playing for a draw all along. h4, kind of an aggressive move. Not what I would call solid, but maybe he's kind of like, he's already like desperate. He started to be desperate. And I would consider h6. Consider h6. You have to be careful. It looks like your move is good though. You're concretely threatening a2 and concretely threatening his knight at f3. And I didn't like g3 to begin with. I'll tell you right now. Knight g5 take, and then he should probably take with a pawn. Because there at least he might have some hope of the h-file. You know, if you're out here fishing for pawns, I mean, it's still not going to be easy to do it, but maybe he can try to get his rook to the h-file and at least have a hope of some threats. But taking with the bishop is like, what does that do? You know, he doesn't have any h-file now. You know, so what counterplay does he have? Nothing. I mean, taking with the pawn is definitely better. Takes, bishop e7. Oh, I missed it. Okay, this was his idea. Okay, I take it back. He has an idea. And if you play f6, you would weaken your structure slightly. And then he has this anyway. So there's a concept for white, I see. There is a concept. Still, his structure is horrific. Bishop e7, here, here. The central pawn, he has a lot of weaknesses, not just the fact that he has IQP is the problem. He has two weak pawns and a bad bishop, and he has like weaknesses on the white squares across the board. Your only problem is that your knights are off sides. So the knight on a5 particularly, get back in the game. Now your queen is sketchy, but his b2 pawn is hanging. He cannot afford to lose a pawn. He went with queen a3. At this point, you know, I don't think you should trade queens. Although maybe you saw something I didn't see. What's wrong with queen c4? Oh, you figure he'll just go here anyway? Maybe you can't avoid the exchange of queens. But you could exchange queens maybe on your terms. I would like to keep the queens on the board because he has these white square weaknesses. If you have queen and knight against like queen and bad bishop, you might be able to play for a mating attack. If there's any chance you can keep the queens on the board, I would do so. Again, it doesn't look like you can. You could possibly argue, though, that this is maybe a better scenario. Something like take here. You're better. It's a sad thing to trade queens, though. I wonder if bishop takes is best. I don't know. And now you played h5, which is a very reasonable move. That gives you king h7 and king invasion on the light squares. The computer would probably hold a draw here. I mean, this is a draw with perfect defense. But in a practical game, white is a little bit worse, you know. So I'm going to try to beat that 100 move game. No problem. Unfortunately, he has bishop d6 now. That looks problematic. Now you have rook b5. Did you move the wrong rook? If you go here, bishop d6, rook b5. If a4, rook a5. I'm not sure. You have some issues. His bishop is very, very active. This is definitely a draw. But again, I think you have chances to outplay him. Maybe your best bet is to hang tight with something like rook here. Not even like oppose the file. I can't believe he didn't play bishop d6. Rook b1 and knight a5, okay. Rook b1, rook b1, knight a5. Now, he very likely would go for... the... If rook b8, take, knight c4, you're winning a pawn. So he has to be careful here. And then you have like rook takes, knight takes. One of these pawns is likely to fall. And you should have chances. But even winning a pawn isn't guaranteed you're winning. There are so many endgames where that bishop will hold down a pawn. If his, I don't like the fact that all of his pawns are on dark squares, though. You know, that's not ideal for white. If his pawns on the king side were like on light squares, his chances are a little better, probably. It's not going to be easy for white. Anyway, king g2, g6. I don't like g6. You might think, oh, well, I want to put all my pawns on light squares, but not necessarily. You know, this pawn might be best on f6. And I really want to penetrate my king up. You could play f6 right away, start with king f7. I don't know about this move. I don't think this is great. f6 gives you a lot of chances. King h7 is possible, trying to come up here. So I don't like g6. Too dogmatic. It's not terrible, but it weakens you a little bit on the dark squares. You have more flexibility if you keep these pawns where they are. But anyway, alright. So this should probably be a draw, but it's not easy for white. Right? Here. And now you did play f6. I'd like to get my king to f5. So maybe king f6. He can play f3, just for example. But it's not like he's going to mate you or something with your king on f5. I don't see how he can construct g4. Your king would be pretty active here. You have these breaks, like maybe playing for an outside pawn or e5. So there's a lot of tricks. f6 is okay. Now you're tied down to the f6 weakness. So it would have been best to put that king on f5. Though I don't think you ever had a winning position. You were always better with practical chances. And the final position, though, it's a pity we can't try to win somehow. Theoretically, if king d7, king c4, knight a5 check, draw. But let's say you go here. He plays bishop there. Did you agree for a draw too early? Knight a5 check. Assuming this is the end of the game. Knight a5 check. Let's say king d3, knight back, or maybe not knight back. Let's go here. Look, it's probably a draw. But if you could get him into a pure, like, knight versus bishop, there's still, even knight versus knight endgame, there's still some chances. You're also threatening to penetrate here. Your problem is the f6 pawn. Right, so bishop f8. Now if you could put your other knight on d7, you could guard and then try to penetrate your king up. Or you can try to go here, here, give him the pawn here. Yeah, I mean, it's very complicated. You're probably not winning. We can turn on the engine. Yeah, he's actually winning here. This plan doesn't work. So you have to play something else. Knight b7. And the moral of the story is that you did the right thing. It's a draw at this point. But you weakened that you shouldn't have weakened this g6 Your king should have stayed over there. But it was a draw anyway. It's a pity, though. There's a lot of chances to win in this type of game against the weaker player. Alright, guys, what time is it? Alright, 8:41. We got plenty of time. What do I got left? Submission from move 11 and Snedsteg. Yeah, I mean, just before the end, I don't like G6. See, the computer is playing some combination of moves and F6. Knight A5, F6, King H7, Rook E8, and F6. So I think this structure is the key. Don't have to blindly put all the pawns on white squares. These pawns are hard for him to attack. He needs to get behind on F8, like in the game, to attack. E6 can be guarded. I'm definitely playing for a win, but I also don't expect to win. I'm expecting that a lot of games will be draw here. Oh, he has Rook B7. Yeah, so I expected this move. If Rook B5 trades in Rook B1, yeah, it was lucky that he didn't play Bishop D6 in the game, by the way. Bishop D6 in the game is best. So this is interesting to consider what you should have done. Rook takes Rook, Rook takes Rook. Sorry. Rook takes Rook, Rook takes Rook. And you're saying Knight A5 was your plan. And so here, for example, the engine draws by playing Knight F4. Knight F4, Bishop F4, and says, I have my bishop and all my pawns on the wrong color, and it's still a draw. No, it's tough. Alright. But I think, trading queens was maybe overconfident. A little bit overconfident. Okay, not easy though. Maybe at that point, once you grabbed on A2, you couldn't avoid trading queens, is another thing. So when he goes here, you have to try queen C4. My evaluation, he was going to go here and force you to trade queens anyway. You would have had a very similar ending. But, maybe the structure is a bit better this way, since the A-pawns aren't lined up symmetrically. And also, his capture on A3, he could also take with the bishop. I wasn't sure which way he should do the capture, but it's probably a draw. Alright, so Snedsteg submitted the first game. This is a OTB game. He said, where is Snedsteg? Snedsteg. Import. This is from November. Online game. I think. Actually. I don't know for sure. No, maybe not. Time control 3600 plus 60. What is that? Plus 60? Probably an OTB game? Is Snedsteg here? Oh, you're here. Sorry. Was this an over-the-board game? And what was the time control? 3600 from 60 plus 60. That's a lot. Just curious. The Portish hook variation. He beat Carlsen. A 1 minute increment. E4, E6, D4, D5, Knight C3. Winnower. E5, C5, A3. Now, I think one thing that occurs to me now, since Mr. Slow, some other players like Mule Skinner had a few games with me. It is interesting to note that if you look at the statistics, Bishop A5 actually has a better score than Bishop takes C3 check. C takes D4 is considered to be like dubious. But maybe this move really is. And I think here, you have to go to seek out the best French defense players. But anyway, we're not playing this from black side. But I do think that as a white side of the winnower, it's very important to give this some serious analysis. This Bishop A5, long time played by Armenians, Luputian and Vaganyan. I'm trying to think, was Vaganyan? Vaganyan wasn't at the World Senior, was he? He was there last year. Man, he got old. Okay, Bishop A5. No, Bishop takes C3, B takes C, and now black plays Queen A5. So this is a very rarely seen move. 2,000 games here. I never see Queen A5. It's very strange. Maybe Ildar Ibragimov played this against me once. I am surprised there's 2,000 games with Queen A5. It's obviously a major line. I personally never ever get people playing that. They always play Knight E7 or Queen C7. Pretty much one or the other. So I don't know this that well. Yeah, maybe move 11. Have we looked at this long ago? I had a game with Ildar in 2001. No, it was later. Well, it was a couple years later, maybe 2003. I don't remember. But anyway, I lost with white. I think I played Bishop D2, Queen A4. Yeah. But I had no experience playing this line. There's also the chicken move, Queen D2. You can do. But anyway, alright, you played Bishop D2? Yeah, so now, yeah, Ildar, who's back somewhere in Russia now. I like Ildar. He was a good guy. Queen A4, he had some problem. I think he got divorced, and I don't know what happened, but I don't know if he got deported or what. Like a lot of former Soviet players, he ended up back in the USSR. Well, whatever it is. Mordor. Like Novikov is back in Kiev. Yermolinsky is in Turkey. What the bottom line is, it's so expensive also, whether you get deported or sent out or Trump revoked you. Trump revoked your green card. It's expensive to live in the United States. It's gotten out of control. And there's no advantages of living in the United States. So the point is, it's just as good to live in Turkey as it is to live in San Francisco. It's just as good to live in Kiev. No. Well, anyway. It's just as good to live in Mordor as it is to live in San Francisco. In Connecticut. I don't know, would you rather live in Connecticut or Mordor? But I think Turkey and San Francisco is also a good toss-up. Prices are better in Turkey. So anyway, the master has a game. What? He lived in South Dakota? Are you serious? He's living in Turkey. There are various reports about his health. He was sent to the hospital at the World Senior Team Championship in July, and he had his appendix removed. But apparently, there's more to it than that, and everyone's kind of hush-hush. And I'm getting I've gotten various reports on Yermo's health. Some people saying he's extremely ill, others saying it's not that bad. So I don't know. But anyway, I think in terms of healthcare, Turkey's a little more, if you have some sort of healthcare issues, Turkey's a little more affordable than living in the United States. Just watch the anesthesiologist if you're getting like a Brazilian butt lift or a hair transplant, as was suggested for me recently on the stream. But definitely an option. If I have to get out of here, maybe Turkey's the place to go. Okay, back to the game. Queen a4. Master has a what? What did you say? Master has a game he'd like to feature as well. Oh. Queen a4. So the dude doesn't play Queen a4. He doesn't know it. I mean, this is important, man. This is a very important move. Black keeps the tension, but he puts pressure on your c2 pawn. I'm trying to remember my game against Ildar. I think I played Queen g4, and he played King f8, and now, what did I do? I don't know what I did. I don't know if I went like crazy. I must have sacrificed my c2 pawn. I think I did something like h4 against Ragimov, but that's my only game in this line ever. And I did lose. I went nuts trying to like attack his king and flush his king out, and he just like walked away and I was lost. Alright. So c4 closing it immediately. This has been played though, check this out. But only by you. When did you play this? Alright, I'll stop. I know that's sort of stupid. Panda's just staring at me. Panda, you look kind of yellow. It was played by someone against Leboyevich in 1974, twice by you. Feels like the kind of thing you do in Blitz or Rapid. So this is the key, Queen g4. He's not putting pressure on this. The center is locked. But now g6, not king f8. See, the thing is, Black probably wants to castle queenside. He's locked the queenside with c4, and so I think that side is fairly secure, and so it's like, oh, I want to castle queenside. So when you play Queen g4, he's like, I don't really like the king f8 here. If I'm going to lock the queenside, I'd rather not play king f8. So he goes ahead and plays g6. No. So your opponent makes a theoretical novelty here. But it looks like it's probably a theoretical lemon. The problem is, can he afford to give you that pawn? In the Winnower it works because the tension is there and he's like breaking through along the c file, or d4 gets weak. But this is like almost like a free pawn. Queen takes g7, rook g8. Well, I guess we should call it two free pawns. Although your doubled pawns aren't great. Ugh, yeah, that doesn't look right. So this is going to be like kind of a wipeout. So the h pawn is a winner. But you've also got pressure on f7. Kind of feels like Black didn't know what he was doing. Black can't afford to lose the base of his pawn chain here. Does he have any threats? Try to trap your queen. Now you played knight f3, but I wasn't sure. I was thinking about this. Because with h3 you have two options. Maybe h3 is more flexible. I mean, this would be nice. To get the knight to f6. I mean, how fast are you, though? Bishop d7, knight f4. he's going to castle, and now there are real possibilities of getting your queen trapped. But I don't trust black's game. This is unsound. Knight f3, bishop d7, and now bishop e2. Excuse me? Alright, so this is a trap. Hector the h-pawn. Yeah. Sean, you've probably played some of these. Although, did you play the Tarash? Our old friend loved the Tarash. Queenside castles. And now queen takes f7. But I don't know, you know. We also got to watch this. You can always do a Spassky, where you put your king on d1, defend. That's what I ended up doing against Ildar, maybe. No, I'm not talking to you, Saxec Draw. Are you my friend? Because if you're my friend, I'm yours too. No, I was talking to Dragonfly Hunter. Your name is also Sean, right? Right. Too many Seans. Ah, it's like Hungary. There's like 5 Istvans at the same table, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do? The problem with Hungary is there's a limited number of names. There's a much more limited number of names, of first names, than in English or America or whatever. And when you're in Hungary, it seems like it's happening much more often, that there's like multiple people with the same name in the same room all the time, and it gets very confusing. In America, it's not quite as bad. There are some, though. Alright, bishop e2, potentially giving this up. Still, black doesn't have much counterplay. I mean, we're blocking our h-pawn. That makes me uncomfortable. This is really awkward. Oh no. I didn't want this to happen. Knight f5. I wish we hadn't had to do it like this. That stops bishop g5 anyway. That's not really an option. Yeah, this doesn't look right. Like what we did here doesn't look right. We need Harry. I thought it was Harry, not Hector. We need Harry to go. Why can't Harry just go right away? h4. Are you going to have some issues? h4, bishop d7, h5. Helpful Harry. Castles. Now this pawn isn't even under attack yet. Black's a little short of counterplay. So how do we get our queen out? Here, here. Shield with the knight on g5. I don't like the way white did it, though. You know, we definitely don't want to end up with our knight on h4. And I still like this idea. But maybe the way to do it is just go here. You know, he's probably got to defend it with rook f8. And then you can even play queen g7. This looks bad, man. I think he's just busted. So the way you did it got you in trouble. This is very, very awkward now. Maybe still you're fine, but yeah, I mean, if he goes knight immediately, well, you'd think he would do that, actually. He's going to force you to play g3, which isn't really a big deal. Cuts off your queen. But he still doesn't have any combinations. Maybe he can sack here at some point. This might work. You know, like knight takes d4, pawn takes d4 here. Still doesn't work. Is there ever a scenario where he can sack on your center? I just don't see black ever have any threats, you know, and that's ultimately, I think, why they always play queen a4 and not c4. There just doesn't seem to be a way to generate threats. So even though you played it awkwardly, he still has no threats. Queen f1 unpinning. But unfortunately, we're going to be dropping the h-pawn, the h-bombs. So, I don't know. We got kind of pinned down in the defense of the position. Now we're looking at two ranks here. I don't love this. We're still probably fine. Finally, queen a4. And that's a very serious threat. And then here, you know, here's a theme that is really important for these lines. You can do rook a2. And now, I remember Botvinnik, Smyslov. There was some game, Smyslov Botvinnik actually, where Botvinnik was black, and you know the plan is to do like boom, boom. You know, he eventually gets in like this, basically, because your rook on a2, you know, maybe not defended or something. But white ended up being better in that game as well. So I don't want to leave this a2 pawn unprotected, but maybe it's better to do it this way. Of course, your rook ends up awkward on a2, but it protects both pawns. So anyway, here. So if he takes on a3, yeah, I mean, it also opens up lines for us. He does take the pawn. He's obviously not obligated to take that pawn. So what I'm thinking is, like, if I'm black here, I'm taking the h-pawn for sure. Harry needs to go. Why take the pawn on a3 when you can take the pawn on h2? The a3 pawn might open up lines for the opponent. So at the end of the day, black's a pawn up, but still white's pretty active. And that's a really monster square. You end up putting your king either e2 or d2 or even d1. Yeah, you got paralyzed, lost the exchange, and that's a very good trade. Your bad bishop for a rook. Still, it's hard to win. You know, you have no passed pawn, and he has b5, a5, b4. What the hell is going on here? Your bishop and his bishop are both blocked in. Not easy to say. Your d4 is about to collapse on b4. I still would be very concerned here. Can we go like rook g7? He can defend. He has bishop e8, knight d8. Uh-oh. I feel a sacrifice on d5 coming. Oh no. So that's kind of a disaster for black. A lot of his winning chances just left the building. Though still he has good chances to hold a fortress draw. What about taking? Counterintuitive, pawn takes pawn. Knight takes d4. Check. King here. And then knight c6 with a double attack. This is really weird. You might have rook Rook A3. I don't know. You're better still. Still winning chances. So you go here, safer move, A5, Rook G7, Bishop E8. And now you can, you can obviously lose if this pawn goes through. And, it may in fact be a threat. But your rook can still get back and stop it. You got your king in the vicinity. You need to get your bishop in the game. So I'm thinking bishop F3. Is it too slow? Apparently F4 is better. Getting the pawns in. Okay, B3. Whoa. So I didn't expect this move because it takes pressure off your chain. But maybe he didn't realize how strong this blockade is. See, since he doesn't have anything to control the dark squares, what I was worried about was this, basically. More so, A4, though maybe he could prepare it. I think his king needs to stay around there, protect his bishop if necessary. But if A4 and you take, again, this is problematic. He has an outside pass pawn, and you lose your center. So I think it's A4, and it looks like he's okay. A4 is the best move. This move looks kind of dubious. Yeah, I would play king C1. So that's a serious mistake by black. You took, but I don't see the advantage in taking, Not really. Maybe it's not that bad. You're undoubling your pawns, but he has two connectors now. I don't think we want to upgrade his number of connected. You're upgrading his number of connected pass pawns, and I would just let it be. King C1. Go here, here. You still didn't play King C1. Jesus. Well, now if King C1, A5, and then we might have a problem. Because if King B2, Knight A5, King A3, Knight C4 check. That's not good. So maybe it's already problematic. Damn. Takes. If King C1, A4. What about this? Like Bishop F3. If A4, Bishop E2, A3. Jesus. King B1. And the only thing this does is like stop knight into C4. But I'm pretty much terrified. And I definitely think he shouldn't have undoubled his pawns. I mean, I guess he has two connected pass pawns anyway. I guess it's true. Like, it doesn't really change anything. Either way, he had two connected pass pawns. King C1 was definitely worthy of consideration. He played F5, and then this is a dangerous move. This is a very serious threat. But he can or he can't. He can't. So what about Knight D8? Dude, you're going to take out his D pawn. Oh. So he can't retreat because of what? This is fascinating. This is really fascinating. Takes, and then knight takes, and he's hitting your rook. So that rook needs a timeout. For example, totally insane position. So after F5, King D7. Aha. So he figures out a way to defend this and defend this and defend this. That's pretty crafty. Bishop F3, and then E takes F5. So the point is you're threatening this. You're threatening to take and play Bishop G4 mate. Ooh, that's nasty. So like here, takes, check, king takes. here, check, f5. Not in love with his king position. It's like he's self-mating, almost. Yeah, I don't understand him taking on f5. Does he really have to do that? The answer is no. So I think maybe he underestimated. You know, he's thinking what I'm thinking, like that was dangerous, but that f5 saves him at the end. So if yeah. Well, he's afraid of takes, check, and bishop g4, and then he doesn't realize how strong f5 is defensively. So he has to play a4. And again, if takes, he's hanging on here. Yeah, he's just barely hanging on. So he takes an f5, and this is not what you want to do. That devalues his pawns. But obviously, more importantly, you're killing everything now. Now that's a beautiful pawn structure. That's a beautiful pawn chain that you've got there, and it really is amazing that I had a game like this. I had a game like this in the last year or so, where my pawn chain remained intact and won the game. The pawn chain remained the same. It's like a Led Zeppelin pawn chain. Bishop takes f7. Check. Enjoy your pawn chain. So you're up the exchange and pawn chain. Pawn chain. So he resigned here. Let's play a few more moves. If king e6, rook check, and if king here, rook check. That's obviously very strong. But if king e6, rook check, and king d7, what's the point? You could just take. You wasn't winning? What? No way. You wasn't winning? Oh my god. King e8. I wouldn't have resigned. But damn. That's unbelievable. He has a move here. So even knight e7 doesn't work. You just play c4. Somehow king e8 saves the game? No way. That's fucking impossible. So you can't go to a7. That's crazy. What about like rook b7? Rook b7, knight a5. I'm not completely surprised he resigned, or did he lose on time? Wow. So obviously rook takes f5, a3. And we all thought like you could stop the pawns. Maybe you could get to like knight versus 3 pawns for sure. Oh my god. That's crazy. With no king of all things, with this king completely cut off, it's just perfect coordination with his knight coming to c4. And now king d1. You basically can't avoid this. Check, and you have to sack your rook. And that's the 3 pawns versus knight. And it's a draw. Wow. That's crazy. I mean, I wouldn't play king e8 on principle. I would have played king e6. And now it's losing after rook f6 check, king d7. But even here, he has to be accurate. You have to be accurate. Why is this winning? And it's funny. This is winning, and it's because you can swing up and get down. You take on f5, a3. This is so weird. Oh no, it's like e6 check when he goes to a5. That's the reason why king 8 cuts off the rook, but also here, you can't play knight a5 because of e6 check. This is the other thing about the king being on d7. So if his king is on e8 here, it's a draw again. You're back to the draw position. That's really crazy. All right, guys, I want to show you guys Acerbate Tribute Blitz game. Little surprise. I promised Acerbate I would show this because I was thinking to him when I played this game, Acerbate, you haven't been playing e4 lately, but in the old days, Acerbate's favorite anti-Scandinavian. So this is Acerbate Tribute Blitz game. This is a 3-0 or 3+2. It's 3-0 game that I played. So d5 takes, and then normally I play knight c3 or knight f3, both. But for Acerbate, I decided to try variation C, the Acerbate variation. And this is like basically equal. The opponent plays the best move. I should mention that also e5 is good. Opponent plays knight c6. I played knight f3. Opponent plays bishop g4. And actually, Acerbate, this isn't a true Acerbate variation, right? Because you're usually going here right away. But I played with you in mind. So bishop e3, knight f6, and then c4. So Acerbate would do this same thing without the knight on f3. And then black plays queen a5 check. And here I was reminded of our old friend Acerbate, because he's always catching people in the old days. He was always catching people with his trap. Bishop d2. And Acerbate's favorite queen trap. If queen b6, c5, queen takes b2, bishop c3, and I think I never saw this queen trap anywhere till you invented the Acerbate. So that's the official Acerbate queen trap. But our opponent was smart, and he saw it, and he played queen f5. And this is maybe better for black. Now my d pawn is hanging, bishop c3. And I thought this is what Acerbate would do if he was me, if I was him. Queen e4 check. And now there's a lot of pressure. Hyper modern. Of course it includes the cheapo trap. Queen e2. Because if I go bishop e2, this move is possible, but I didn't like my king side so much. So I played queen e2. Here he trades queens. Queen takes e2, bishop takes e2, and now e6. And the position is about equal, I think. Despite my bad pawn structure, I have the two bishops, the g file. I played knight d2. He played bishop e4. I traded. That's not forced. Take, castles queenside. Now my opponent plays knight takes a2 check, king b1. This is a 3-0 blitz game. Knight b4, and then f4, knight c6, knight b3, castles, bishop f3, and then knight d8. So this guy's defending pretty well. He's up a pawn. You're wondering, could my opponent be a computer? I don't think so, but he's decent. Knight c5, c6, and then h4. And now, it's odd that his knight... I just thought this was a funny game. 1 in 100, like, offhand games that I play anonymously, I get something strange that I think is worth sharing. h4, b6, knight d3, rook c8, and then c5. Where we're, like, clamping down spatially. Takes, and then knight d5. So you got to give squares to get squares. Knight d5, king c2, knight b7. So he finally fixed his knight. Rook a1, a5, rook a4, rook a8, rook a1, rook fe8, h5, f6, and then rook c4. And the point is, I have maybe this for one thing. But my opponent now just blundered. Nothing to see here. Takes, 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 takes. Here. And then takes. And I won on time. Okay. But I just thought that was fun. Because it was for Acerbate. The other quick one, I've got the game from move 11 here. But I want to show you guys this for Nefedov. There was the Philidor refuted. I suggested this with Nefedov. The G4 Gambit. G Nakamura Gambit. Now this is another offhand 3-0 game where I'm white. This is not sound. I mean, the Gambit's sound, but my future play is not sound. Bishop e2, and here Popovich played Bishop e6, which is bad. Actually, the best move is knight takes g4, probably. Also interesting, maybe like d5. So I played bishop takes g4, bishop e2 to show you how dangerous this gambit is. My opponent played the very bad knight c6, and I've had 2 games from this position. The best move actually is knight takes c6, I believe, and then castle queenside as fast as possible. I had another game where I got an edge and won the game easily, but in this game I tried to attack with knight f5. My opponent played g6, and now I went crazy, you know. But it's a 3-0 game. I should just maybe take the bishop here with knight takes e7, and white has extremely good compensation for the sacrificed pawn. Idea of castling queenside, unopposed dark square bishop is quite strong. But I got carried away, but it's a very funny game. Knight f5, this is just for entertainment. g6, knight g7 check, king f8. And actually, I'm trying to remember if maybe king d7? Yeah, this isn't easy to find. It turns out king d7 is actually better, because he can hide over there, and my knight is like trapped. But most people are going to play king f8, and now this is pretty unsound. Bishop h6, king g8. But I just thought it was funny how black lost this game. Castles queenside, bishop f8. He's like trapping my knight, but it's not trapped because of knight f5. So I thought this was just funny to share, you know. And then black gets mated. She takes f5 check. Here, check, check, and mate. Now obviously he could delay the game one more move with queen g5. But he didn't drag it out. Alright, anyway. Onward and upward. Word Kaskas. So what's that you wanted to show there, Sensstag? E4, D6, D4, knight D7, bishop C4. That's another move order. C6, knight F3, E5. Oh, well, this is transposing to what I was talking about. Now, I would normally do like C3 here, but apparently B5 is okay. Miloš Popovich. Maybe a relation. I didn't know that the great Popovich the Great had a brother. B5. Let's see. So C6, knight F3, E5, knight G5. There's a very sound. Dusko against Lembedol. Ooh, Dusko's played this twice. Dusko's good heads-up poker. Was a good heads-up poker player. I don't know if he's still doing poker. He quit chess at one point to play heads-up poker. Knight G5, knight H6, and now what? A4. This is Kovacevic Ol. Kovacevic losing. A4. He also beat another player. A4. Bishop E7. Oh, okay. So this has happened. This is Italian guy, Paolo Bersamina. And a game before that, Tihomir. That's similar to Hungarian. Takes, check, knight f7, knight e6. 2 moves are possible here. It's still not that simple. Queen a5 check. Oh, traps the queen? Are we trapping the queen? That's the point? We're trapping the queen. Oh, that's cute. Cute. Queen b6, a5. Oh, you got the theme. Bishop c3. That's the acerbate queen trap. Nice. So we get the point now. Actually, 11 moves to execute the acerbate queen trap. Of course, b5 is indirectly controlled by the knight c7 check. The theme. The acerbate queen trap theme. Nice. Now that's a cool one. Alright, so final game for today, guys. Move 11 submission of the ultra boring... No, I'm just kidding. Sarawan against Robert Hardison. Kind of a mismatch. I mean, Yasser's 2600 and Hardison's 2300. So... file this under, Yasser playing like borderline amateur. D4, knight f6, c4, g6. By the way, a good example of like it's not a good idea to play the King's Indian against stronger players. All I know about Hardison was that he played here a few times. I never played him. I think he played some IM tournaments when I was playing in GM tournaments. But he used to play some weird stuff, like some strange white side of the Sicilian with like queen takes d4 in the sort of queen takes d4 in the Smith Mora or whatever. But anyway, good luck playing the black side of the King's Indian against Yasser. So e4, d6, f3. But this game was played when? Oh, 1986. So this is 86. I saw Hardison, later. He's an FM from Iceland. Pretty strong FM, a decent FM. But Yasser would later... Yasser plays a lot of stuff, but he would later start playing the bishop d3. This was 1986. A few years later, this would become Yasser's kind of go-to variation, and now he plays a lot of Benoni's with knight on GD e2 as well. So this game was played in 1986. Again, had it been played a little bit later, maybe 10 years later, or even less, we'd probably see bishop d3 from Sarawan. But that wasn't trending yet. So Yasser was still playing the Zamish, apparently. f3, castles, bishop g5. Now this is a line I've played a lot. And, bishop e3 and knight e2 are more common. So the problem with bishop g5 is that it doesn't really help us necessarily fight for control of d4. Black has a lot of different ways to play. Hardison plays the main line, c5, turning it into a Benoni. And now with the bishop on g5, we have to push d5. Your bishop, if you want to keep the tension and play like a Marazzi, you can play here c5 and then just keep the tension, like a game I had at the World Senior. Bishop g5, c5, d5, and now e6. So this is main line. Mainline bishop g5, king's Indian / Benoni. Here, most common move is queen d2, but I would imagine you could play knight e2. This is main move. I've had this position many times with both colors. E takes d5. Very rarely people will take with a knight. That's considered to be like kind of lame, but safe. Pawn takes, and now a6. And now that I think about it, no, my game at the World Senior was different. It was a bishop e3. Now white plays a4. I had this position against Tal Shakhed at the Newark Open in 1996. And he played, I'm trying to remember, knight bd7, I think. I've had this game against multiple people. There's also h6. Bishop takes h6. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. I had this with Jay Bonin. We had a draw in this line. Queen h4 check, g3. Queen takes h6. Queen takes h6. This was theory for a while, but I guess people realize it's nothing special. I couldn't beat Bonin. But rook e8 now. I mean, this move is technically recommended because if you play knight on bd7, this is what Shakhed did against me. White's supposed to be better after knight h3. I still lost because I can play knight h3, knight f2. I thought this was kind of inaccurate for black. So it looks like black's move order is correct. Rook e8, knight on g to e2, now knight on bd7, and now Yasser has two ways to go with the knight. But he's going to have trouble against Mr. Slow. I don't know about Robert Harderson. And the main move is knight g3. So Yasser plays knight g3, and now Harderson plays rook b8. But I've always thought of this move as overrated. If you play queen a5, there are some tactics like involving trying to play b5. I would normally do rook a3 to stop it. But I suppose this has all been like reanalyzed. Anyway, this move is kind of unusual. So rook b8. You know, at some point somebody's gonna like be at the end of their book, and I think this is where Harderson kind of went out of book, and Yasser knows the position more deeply. But it looks like h5 is the move where black tries to generate counterplay. Of course, you can't play h4 without breaking the pin. So after bishop e2, we need a way to break the pin. Or we don't need a way to break the pin. Very interesting. Wow. I've never looked at this. So you do h4 anyway. And if bishop takes h4, knight takes e4. That's a nice trap. So white plays knight f1. Wow. These look like they're all correspondence games. There's no OTB games. These are all, almost, if not all of them, almost all. Maybe this is a real game. Alexander Zubarev, black in 2006. That appears to be possibly the only real game that was played over the board. So Zubarev comes up with h4. But I don't like rook b8. How bad can it be, though? Okay, bishop e2, queen c7 now. Black could play h5. Castles. And now Asterbate style, c4. Benoni style. So he's playing in total Benoni style. c4. And now we have possible a5. Black's threatening this. One thing that white often does, you can play for b4 yourself. So for example, rook fc1. I could be threatening b4. If b5, can I play this? Let us check. So apparently, this pawn is too dangerous. Takes. This pawn is very dangerous. So anyway, let's see what happened. Queen c7, black playing Astrobate style, c4, and then we come back. Nakamura Kasparov, 2016. b5, and then Kasparov didn't play b5, so Kasparov probably played h5. Kasparov knows his shit, and apparently lost to Hikaru in a blitz game or something like that. But b5 is also playable. Take, b4. This is what the idea I was talking about. And now black can do this. Wow. So there's a TN here. C takes b. Knight takes b5. Queen c2. Queen c2. b c2. The base of the pawn chain could fall. But then black has a crazy tactic. A lot of tactics here. Wow. So Hardison didn't find it. So apparently after b4, there's only one move. There's also rook a7. Rook a7 is possibly better because you force the queen back to a less active square and then play b4. And here's Alexander Chernin against Chekhov, 1984. b4. You wonder where Yasser gets his ideas. This game was played, this is a predecessor game. C takes b3, knight takes b5, or bishop takes b5. Interesting. So Yasser goes with b4, and black misses, takes, and plays this. And this is something that I never do. Rule 1 of King's Indian and Benoni is never put your knight on f8. Actually, open King's Indians. It's very rare. In the Mar del Plata variation, you can maybe put your knight on f8 or something, but in the Benoni type structures, you never want to put your knight on f8, Astrobate. You know this. You never want to put your knight on f8. I would rather go down swinging with my knight on e5 than put my knight on f8. This is really bad. And now rook a7, queen d8. Black's getting squeezed. Rook e7. Massive advantage to white. And now Yasser's just... Speaking of pawn chains, this is the whole position. White is just winning with the white pawn wall. If you can't... What did I get? A donation? Thank you. No. A follow from Shalom. And Titus. And the offensive guy. Thank you, offensive person. For following, you are now banned. But with that wall, how do you break through? Black's completely... If you can't play f5 and break my structure, you're dead. That's it. That's the whole point of the Samish variation. Hardison is out of his league here. So bishop f1, and then black is just lost. Yasser's just going to quietly maneuver his knight into d4. But this is brutal. It's now you're threatening to trap the knight with f4, essentially. He has to go, he goes back. He could have gone to d3. This is really ugly. Winning? No, this is file under losing ugly. Yasser is just playing with his food. And I guess that pawn doesn't matter too much. So at the end of the day, we're up the exchange. No, We have a rook for. We have a rook for a piece and a pawn. No, a rook and a pawn for 2 pieces, which shouldn't be enough. But the b pawn just can't be stopped. Yeah, he just wins a piece right back, actually. Right back at you, Hardison. He just wins a piece right back. Oof. Yeah. Anyway, that was easy. I mean, the game is like over. King f2, black resigns. Wait a second here. King f2, black resigns. So maybe this is the point. Did Hardison resign in a not lost position? Well, this is like 40 moves, dude. Yasser made the time control with bishop d3. Black played knight takes d5. He played king f2 and black resigned. But he should have played bishop c4, pinning the knight. So after king f2, black resigned in a not lost position. But you never know. You can't trust. We can't trust this game score, man. This is from 1986. This wasn't played on a DGT board. It's impossible to verify if this move order happened. But if it was correct, then it looks like Hardison resigned in a position where he wasn't lost. But you have no way to know for sure. That would be weird. You know, it would be weird, dude. I guess at 2600, you can take on b4 and you resign. That's a little hard to believe, actually. There's only like a few pawns left for both sides. So I would question the accuracy of this game score. Possibly a time scramble. Most likely the game score could have been incorrect. But I don't see anybody really resigning in that position. I mean, it's so obvious. You just take the pawn on b4, and now white has to be careful. King e2. Takes, and, you know, who knows? Maybe Sarwan is better here. But, I mean, resigning? That's kind of weird. Here. Check. King e6. And now black's threatening bishop here. He also has a pawn on the 6th rank, so something a bit fishy about the game score, I think. All right. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. I'm kind of fading here, so I'm gonna break it off. It was nice knowing you. We'll see you again soon. We'll see you on Sunday. I'm kind of taking a pause on the midday streams. Those are poorly attended. So we're gonna see you guys Sunday with the simul stream. Right now we're doing the 3 streams a week, but maybe 4. I want to consider doing another evening stream. Maybe I'll surprise you guys and be here tomorrow night. But I haven't made up my mind. Could be a Red Dead Redemption stream on Friday night. Who knows? You know, you never know. Maybe a surprise stream every week, something like that. But anyway, good to see you, Mr. Coffee. Thanks, bye. Thanks for stopping by. What else? That's it. Peace, everybody. We'll see you on Sunday.